All right, welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. I'm stoked for today. Here we go. Borderlands, somehow we're still not learning. Borderlands, we still suck at running. All right, my guest today is Simon Freeman. He's the co-founder of Like the Wind magazine, telling stories about trail, track, and road running from multiple angles. It's deeper than that. It's bigger than that. But that's where I'm coming at you today, saying they're in all types of running. And this conversation is going to be all encompassing of everything from running to print to everything in between. And we might end up even talking about watches. Who knows? Like the Wind caught my eye most recently, because Mike McMonagle took the cover of this quarter's issue of Leah Yangling, and I'm a Salt Lake guy. I'm a big fan. Leah's one of my favorite runners. Mike's one of my favorite people, where I'd even call him a friend. Just a fantastic photographer, just a great guy to have in your corner and in this industry. And then, Like the Wind published online a story by Matt Burbach of his running of the Oregon Cascades of his first 100-miler. So that pops up. He sends it to me. So there's just kind of in my life, all things were Like the Wind. And then I'm on LinkedIn from time to time, and Simon posts on there, and his stuff's great. And I like the way that he writes his posts and the way he formulates his opinions and the way that he engages. And so all things Like the Wind in my life. And so I reached out, and he said he'd join me. And we'll get into this. We're kind of like two ships crisscrossing in the night right now. My life was tactile, in person, coffee shops, restaurants, bars, and I have made my way towards digital. And his life has been digital, from what I understand. And he's fully immersed now in the world of tactile with print magazines. I am just really excited about this conversation. Before we get into it, though, borderlands.cc, that's kind of becoming the epicenter of everything that I'm doing. Around the app that we're building called Wilder, that will release in the first quarter of next year. It's for you to find a new run club, and for run club managers to manage their run clubs easier and better. What else? Billy Yang. I'm doing a run with Billy Yang on January 18th in Salt Lake. So I'm going back for literally 36 hours. I'm going to go back to Salt Lake, going to run with Billy. We'll do a live podcast. I'm really excited for that. So if you're in Salt Lake, go to Ultra Sign Up, and you can find that. The link will be in the show notes. And I think that's it. Simon, thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm great, actually. Just returned home to our little town in Switzerland from Chamonix.
Nice.
Not bad. Not bad.
You don't appear to have a Swiss accent. Tell me about how you ended up in Switzerland.
Yeah, I'm a Londoner, born and bred, and I met my wife, Julie, who's the co-founder of Like the Wind, and in fact, the other business that we founded, which maybe we'll get to talk about a little bit, called Freestack. Julie was in London finishing up her degree, and we met, got married, lived happily in London, and then Julie's Swiss, and for for not great reasons, it was a bit of a health problem with a member of Julie's family. We decided to come back because we wanted to be here and be able to support. So we moved from London to a small town called La Chaux-de-Fonds, which sort of, as you alluded to, is the home of the watchmaking industry in Switzerland, and is I would say, quiet, verging on depressed place, because nobody makes mechanical watches anymore, or there's far fewer. So we find ourselves in this little town, 30,000 people, 1,000 meters above sea level. It's been snowing quite heavily. So we have to get up every morning and move the car because they plough the roads. It's all new. It's not North London, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's great. Yeah, so, all right, you have been doing Like the Wind. Let me first say this. A great listen is the interview that you did with Dylan and Aaron on Second Nature. And they went into they go into really great detail of your history and all that. And I want to put that in the show notes because I think that's a great listen, to establish provide even more context of what we're talking about. I'm trying to kind of launch out of that, since, a lot of that is accessible information, but I do think it's going to be helpful for my audience. Like, we see a lot of my audience is a digital audience, like we're online. And so Like the Wind has this online presence. If you've ever been to any of the, races, like it feels like the Wind will activate there, but can you give just a high level of of what Like the Wind is practically, and kind of like the heart and soul of it as well.
Sure. I'm going to misquote now, but there's some quote, isn't there, about great artists steal something about
Yeah.
some people. Yeah,
Yeah.
Actually, Chamonix is a good starting point. So Julie and I had launched a business called Freestack, and the intention for that business was that we wanted to be a one-stop shop marketing business agency for run, cycle, and outdoors brands. I can get into why we started that, but essentially that business had been going for about a year, and then we went to Chamonix and we followed the UTMB route, the Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc route,
Nice.
over 3 days. We packed light, little backpack, and we just ran from mountain hut to mountain hut over 3 days. And one of the topics that we got onto was why I was obsessively buying surfing magazines and climbing magazines and cycling magazines in particular.
Yeah.
And I didn't even own a bicycle. And Julie was like, I was running 90-mile weeks and not doing any of these other activities, but I just love the format. I love the idea of something that is not a book. So more, I guess, more. Where the word magazine, the word comes from. Well, so the word comes from an old word for a storage unit, a place where they would store. So So now, of course, a magazine. Often, when you say magazine, it's either a printed document or the thing that you put bullets in that you stick in a gun. But it's this idea of a space that holds lots of things.
Oh, and so in Paris here, sometimes there's either stores are called magasin
a magasin, right? Yeah. A magasin, right? Exactly. Yeah. The idea of a magazine is that it's a collection of things that go together, but it's not as singular as a book. So I just love the format. I love the fact that you pick up a magazine, read a story. It might take you 10 minutes, put it back, put it down. It's more than a clip. It's more than a social media post. It's got more depth than that, but it's not a book.
Yeah.
So I was buying all these magazines about subjects that I wasn't particularly interested in, but I loved the format. And Julie famously, I'm going to get her a T-shirt with this on it one day, but Julie famously said, "Why does that magazine in running not exist?" And I said, "I don't know." And Julie said, "We should give it a go," because we had already started a business together. So we were sort of our own bosses. And unfortunately, at that point, we weren't fully busy. Julie said, "How hard can it be?" That's the T-shirt I'm going to get.
That's a great running shirt in general.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and I guess you'll know this as well as an entrepreneur, when you come across an idea that you think is great, that is very quickly followed up with, well, somebody else must be coming up with the same idea right now. Yeah. So now we sort of suddenly felt like, we can't be the first people to have thought of this idea of a long form coffee table, high quality, beautifully designed, almost journal type publication in running. Somebody else must be working on it at the same time.
Right.
So the run around the Mont Blanc was in the September. We started working on the first issue of Like the Wind in the October, and we launched it in the February at a party in London.
And so we're talking like 12 years ago.
Yeah, it would be 11 years
11.
In March. Yeah, so
11 in March.
So we're sort of in our second decade. And
okay.
Truthfully, it was always a side project to the other business, to Freestack, until we exited Freestack 2 years ago. And so now this year really is the first year that we've been full time on the magazine. So
yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying. Like, you are in the digital world, building tech. Everything that the value that you were creating was in the digital realm, and now you've completely embraced the tactile world. Even as much. Here's what I think is most interesting, and you can tell me if my observation is correct. Your website isn't an online version of your magazine. Meaning, what that says to me is that you are really pushing, like, you want the experience. You have to hold this magazine in your hand. These stories are great, but they're not. But they also, like, you're not only writing the story, you're also driving the experience with which they consume it. Because you're not just giving me the words on my screen. You say, "Get the magazine." Am I close?
100%. You're right there. I mean, I really believe, to an extent, the media is the message. And
Wow.
I'm a big believer in, by the way, I'm not some sort of, anti-tech Luddite. I'm not saying no social. I'm not saying anything like that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is I believe we live in an and world. So I was speaking at a conference last week. It was last week in the UK. And I drew this terrible chart. It was ridiculous. But if you can imagine a sort of an up and to the right chart, where the bottom left-hand corner was cave painting and the top right-hand corner was Web 3.0, AI, wherever we're at now. And in between, you go cave painting, scrolls, the first printing press, radio, television, you sort of move up this media curve, if you like.
Yeah.
And the direction is in faster, cheaper, bigger reach, generally.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, one of the interesting things is that probably with the, I was going to say with the exception of cave painting, but without exception, perhaps, none of those media have been completely wiped out by the emergence of a new media. So cave painting, I'm going to argue, has morphed into fine art, and people still go to art galleries. They still look at paintings on the wall. They still get something from them. TV, as Freddie Mercury famously said, TV killed radio. But you and I are recording effectively a radio show, right?
Yes.
Podcasting, I would argue, is the more modern version of radio. So radio still has a place. Even if television is potentially losing its dominance, YouTube is massive. People are still watching video. So my point being that magazines lost their a dominance of the media landscape, if in fact they ever had it. Let's lump newspapers and magazines together.
Yeah.
But they haven't disappeared. I still buy a copy of the FT on the Financial Times at the weekend because my life is spent on a screen. I think most of ours are. I'm on a phone or I'm on my laptop. So having a moment on a Saturday where I sit with a cup of coffee and I read a physical newspaper, and there's all sorts of other elements to this. I mean, I'm fascinated by the invention of the endless scroll. I need to remember this guy's name, but it's a guy that invented the endless scroll.
Yes, I feel like I've read about him.
Right, I think I wrote about it as well recently.
Okay,
and he's a bit of a sort of, I think he's turned into a bit of a sort of Oppenheimer character in that he kind of came up with this idea, and then he was sort of like, oh my God, what have I done? And now I believe that he actually lectures on why the infinite scroll is not such a brilliant concept.
Yeah,
but I love the fact that media like newspapers, magazines, radio shows, even podcasts, there's a degree of curation and editing on the part of the editor, the host, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You can't possibly, well, you probably could, but you shouldn't be putting out 10 episodes of the Borderlands Trail Running podcast a day. So you have to pick your guests. You have to think about what you're trying to say to them. You can only do it within 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And people trust you as a media owner, as the host and the media owner, and they think, I like Josh's work. I appreciate him, so I'm going to consume what he produces because there's a degree of trust.
Yeah.
So I think magazines still have a place. There's elements of it that have disappeared because the internet is better at certain things than magazines could ever be.
I think I would equate it though to the internet is much better at delivering music than a vinyl record. But what I've watched within music, because I used to be a musician. Back when I was a musician, I was selling CDs, and CDs was a massive piece of my per unit cost was like $2. I could sell them for 10 to 12 when I'd play concerts. Like that's where a lot of the money came from. And then the digital world came along and really made it to where musicians had to rethink how they made money. And I don't know where vinyl plays into that, but eventually it's like, okay, the CD's gone, cassette has kind of made a bit of a comeback, but vinyl, anytime I go to a concert, there is it's all vinyl that's for sale. And I don't know if initially that was a nostalgia play that then became sort of an ironic thing, but then but now it's like pervasive, and it feels like not only is it back, but it gives musicians a way to monetize their music again on tour. Like tour is where all the money is, but now they actually have stuff beyond shirts, music that they can sell.
Yep.
Do you think that print is anywhere in that cycle? Is it ironic? Is it nostalgic? Or is it back? Is it, I mean, and I ask that from a business standpoint and from a consumer standpoint. Like, what are you seeing?
Well, so the vinyl revival is fascinating. So we went for dinner with some friends that live here in La Chaux-de-Fonds a little while ago. And, it's the usual, everyone's standing around having a glass of wine before dinner. And there was some really nice music playing. The guy, the couple that we know of, like Julie and I, very into music. Music was great. We sat down for dinner, and then the music stopped, and our host got up and walked across the room, opened the record player, lifted the needle off, took the vinyl off, fiddled around for a second, took another vinyl out, put it on, put the needle on, closed the lid, sat back down. And there was a bit of me that thought, wow, what a palaver. Like, and in 20 minutes, he's going to have to go and do that again, continually.
Yeah.
And then I thought, no, this is brilliant, because we're not listening to an algorithm-driven playlist. Mm-hmm. He's making a choice. He's deciding for him, his partner, and Julie and I, this is the piece of music that I want to listen to. We're listening to an album. So we're going to listen to the same artist for 20 minutes. We're going to listen to 4 or 5 pieces of their music before he goes and flips it over. I was like, this has got real value. That I think that's why he could have easily plugged his iPhone or whatever, his smartphone, into his amp and just pressed play on a Spotify playlist, and it would have just played music continually.
Yeah.
But there's something so intentional about, I'm picking that piece of vinyl, we're going to listen to it. When it finishes, I'm going to get up, walk across the room, pick it up, take the needle off. It's almost like the interruption adds value to the experience. And I think that's the same as picking up a book is very intentional. You're making a decision to invest your time in that. I think a magazine's the same. If somebody buys a copy of Like the Wind, it's cost them money.
Yeah.
So they've made an intentional decision to pay for the thing.
Yeah.
There's sort of a degree of, if not, well, maybe first of all, it's curiosity. Like, what's this thing all about? But if we have subscribers that have subscribed since issue 1.
Wow.
43 issues and counting.
Wow.
11 years. That's very intentional. And it's like, I'm going to take 20 minutes out of my crazy week to sit and read a story in a magazine. Versus it's all just stuff that's just going on and on and on and on in the background. So I think, I don't know how much there is a nostalgia thing. I actually think it's more current than that. I think it's more that people are like, I need to be more intentional about what I consume from a media perspective. And whether that's vinyl, CDs, cassettes, magazines, a newspaper, a book, even going to the cinema. I know you live in France, in Paris. I live in a French-speaking town in Switzerland, and my French is not very good. Our local cinema plays a film in English once a week. And Julie and I went the other week and sat in the cinema, and I thought, this is amazing. I just spent 2 hours on a thing. Like there was no phone, there was no distraction.
Great
there was
point.
no clicking onto the next thing, no I'm bored,
that's
move
really
on.
Good. Yep.
If the film slows down a little bit, you sit there, unless it's absolutely terrible, then you get up and leave. But there's a sort of, you're in this thing. So I think, I don't know if I'm being coherent, but I just feel like...
That's a really good observation. And what I love about that is all the things that we're mentioning is just how you started. These are the inverse of the infinite scroll. It's it's the death to the infinite scroll. It's like there's an immediacy to it. When I'm reading Like the Wind, I can't be also like my email pops up and I can't check my email. Now I've got 5 tabs open and I'm simultaneously doing 5 things. And when I'm at the movie, like when I'm reading a magazine, I'm reading a magazine. When I'm reading a book, I'm very much into reading right now because I have a lot of commuting around Paris to take kids to school and pick them up. So I'm going through all the classics I never read that I was assigned growing up. Like right now I'm reading Lord of the Flies.
I was going to say, but are you not reading like Dumas and French authors like that, so that when you're
I
sat
know.
on the subway, you can
But
people are a bit
I'll
like,
tell you,
uh-huh.
they really want you to read Dumas. I mean,
They really do.
everything is like massive stacks of was it Alexander Dumas?
Dumas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, they really want that. But no, I started by reading the books that Hemingway was inspired to write while living, because I'm living in the sixth, which is right where he lived when he wrote A Movable Feast.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just started working my way through all these authors. But, and the point is that when I'm doing it, it's the only time that's the only thing I'm doing. I mean, because if I'm watching TV at home, and so all the thing I guess that the pandemic put into place in terms of the digital reliance that our brains have, I feel like all the stuff that you're talking about kind of is the thing that pulls us out and gives us these nice moments of being focused on one thing.
Yeah. Well, and this again, I'm possibly stretching here, but I do say this over and over again in the hope that it will suddenly somehow become true.
Yeah.
Running is inherently analog. I have yet to find somebody who runs virtually, and I'm pathologically.
It's coming.
Well, I hope not. I really hope not. I'm sort of pathologically anti-running on my own. I think I really struggle at running on my own. I love running with other people, but if I but I do run on my own a lot. So I'm either listening to a podcast, so Borderlands will just be I'll just download it. But again, I trust you, so I'm now going to listen. I'm not going to stop every 3 minutes and flick on to the next thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to commit to a 45-minute run and an episode of Borderlands, or a playlist. And my wife curates the most amazing playlists.
Really?
So I'll just be like, oh yeah,
that's cool.
It's brilliant. And it'll all be in music that I'm not fully familiar with. And she'll be like, oh, I've got a playlist for you. And I put it on and it's like audio EPO.
Whoa.
But I'm listening to it. I'm not going to stop. Once it's on, I put my headphones in and I go. And I'm not, I'm not stopping and mucking about. So sometimes the playlist, halfway through the playlist, I think, I don't like that track. But it'll be over in 4 minutes. Just got to just don't. Yeah, just keep going. And she's put it on there intentionally. There's a reason for it.
Yeah.
So I think that, it's about the intentionality. It's like, that's what I think is happening.
Yeah. And so then you as publisher, I mean, for those who haven't purchased a Like the Wind, first off, you can go to likethewindmagazine.com. Is that where, is that the exclusive place to obtain them?
I mean, we are in some
like run
specialty and some magazine shops.
Okay.
The infrastructure that supported physical media publishing has just been completely dismantled. So now, the model of selling a magazine in a shop is completely broken. It's been broken for a long time.
Yeah.
But now it's completely broken. Unless there's a few shops. There's a shop called Mag Culture in London in Angel, which is phenomenal. If anyone likes the idea of magazines, just go to Mag Culture. Go and see Jeremy, who owns it. Every single time I go in, I spend £100. I mean, it's beautiful. So there's a bunch of shops like that, and then we're in some specialty retail. But people will say to me, "Oh, I live in Salt Lake City. Where can I find a magazine?" I'm like, well, unless you're going to drive to Denver and go to BP Runco, I don't know. That's a bloody long way to. Don't drive to Denver to buy a magazine. I'd rather people just ordered a copy, we'll ship it to you. If you hate it, send me an email and tell me. I'll just refund your money.
Nice.
That's what I'd rather do. Yeah. Honestly, it's that's what I'm.
Have you? So with the distribution model, I mean, to some degrees, if you're in run specialty, you mentioned BP Runco. They've like reached out and said, "Hey, we want to carry some." There's probably not like a magazine distributor, at least for the specialty type of magazine that you are, to like get on with that distributor that will then put it into, I don't know, Barnes and Noble. Where do they? Where would they even put it in America? I don't know.
Barnes and Noble, so interesting. So we were in Barnes and Noble.
Really?
Yeah, and just for listeners. This is how this works. So let's say Barnes and Noble say we'll take 1,000 copies on consignment, right? So they don't pay for them.
Oh, even Barnes and Noble's consignment.
Oh, especially Barnes and Noble.
It makes sense because they have like 5,000 magazines, and they don't. So they don't put money at risk on those. Got it.
No, No.
Okay.
So they take them on because let's say 1,000 copies, which costs me a lot of money because they're expensive to make.
Yeah.
So they take 1,000 copies, they distribute them around all the Barnes and Nobles. Then when the next issue comes out, that whatever's left on the shelf, they take off the shelf. They rip the covers off, throw the magazines in the trash or in the recycling, and send the covers, just the covers, back as proof of what they didn't sell. And then we get to charge them 50% of the cover price of what they did sell. So let's just say, and this is, so let's just say we give them 1,000, they sell 500. 500 go in the bin. We get 500 covers back to prove that they only sold 500. And then we get to charge them for 250 because half the cover price has to go to them. That's their margin.
Whoa.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, I was in coffee. We had great distribution. We were our own distributors. We rather than join one, we became our own. And anyway, when we tried to leave Utah with our coffee, when you actually get into these national distributors, I don't know how anybody makes money with a distributor when you have certain, let's say, there I go looking up that way from a previous conversation. When you have value, like when you're trying to produce a high quality product, which we were trying to do with our coffee, when you do that, you're spending a little bit more on it, but the market is only willing to pay still the same price. And so the money's not always there to, I mean, I don't know how, to your point with Barnes and Noble, I don't know how anyone who's trying to put out something of high quality can actually exist in Whole Foods all across America, Kroger, all across America, Carrefour, anything like that. The high quality stuff, it's the model isn't built for that, which then makes you question, well, what is in all of these places if it's not the high quality stuff?
Well, I mean, I think if you go into any magazine chain, like big chain, you'll see what's on the shelf. The way the model for publishing works is that you say, well, okay, we know that we're going to give them, we know that they're only going to sell 30 or 20 or 30% of the copies we give them, but we get to claim a distribution figure. So we then sell advertising off the back of the distribution figure.
I was going to actually ask you about that. So you have to pay into the advertising model.
100%. So what you do is you go to, we could distribute 100,000 copies of Like the Wind magazine tomorrow. I just have to print them. But they're going out on consignment. So so I'm massively incentivized as a publisher to make the paper as cheap as possible, to make the weight as low as possible, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then my ad sales team runs around going, we're distributing 100,000 copies. I'm not doing that. That's not what we're trying to do here. I'm looking for people that actually, we describe our readers as people for whom running's a lifestyle or part of their lifestyle. Yeah. And they want something that's high quality. They're prepared to pay for it. It's not a cheap magazine.
Yeah.
And it's going to be delivered 4 times a year to their front door. But there are dozens of new indie magazines that are following the same model.
Yeah.
So
there's a really cool coffee shop here, not too far from my house, and it's called Bonjour Jacob, and it's really cool. It's a magazine coffee shop, and one of the reasons I love big cities, I'm from West Texas, a really small town in West Texas called Lubbock before moving to Salt Lake. What I love about big cities is that, like coffee shops, you can get real creative with your business model, because here they can have, it can be crazy packed, but they don't allow laptops. It's you drink coffee, and you either drink coffee and talk with someone, or you drink coffee, and they have magazines that you don't have to buy that you can consume, but they also have really beautiful magazines that I have never seen before. It's you might know it. They have one that's called Brand, and it's just a bee.
And they just pick a brand every issue.
It'd be like Arc'teryx, and it'd be like 100 beautiful pages of Arc'teryx. And then they have another one, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like ingredients. So they'll have one that's like 100 stunning pages of honey and sugar. Yeah. And so you go and so to your point, like, there's certain environments, and so they're the ones, and I don't know what their model is, but however they're obtaining these brand magazines that they sell for 30, 40 euros. It just seems like that, I don't know, is that growing? Is that getting smaller? Like, are you aware of it, even, just that the distribution channels that get you there.
Yeah, but brand, by the way, is like an OG. They're South Korean.
Oh, really?
Amazing. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
It really is. And I don't know how long they've been going, but they're probably on issue like 120 or something. They've been going for a very long
that's
time.
Cool to know that there's that many out there that I could find, because that's a very worthwhile publication.
Yeah, it really is. I think, I buy it all the time. It's interesting though, because I don't buy it for, like, if they did one on Porsche, I wouldn't buy it because I'm not a car guy, but they do one on Patagonia. I'm like, 100% I'm buying that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is massive growth in this. And I say massive growth with the caveat that we're talking about growth from a very, very low base.
Sure.
So, but I'll give you an example. I mean, I love what you just said about the cafe with the magazine. So there's, we've just done a collaboration with an organization called News and Coffee. They started in Barcelona. They're in Madrid. They have a kiosk. So they basically build these beautiful kiosks, fill them full of amazing indie magazines, and then they make really good coffee. So we just did a collaboration with them in Valencia around the marathon.
Very cool.
Yeah, which was a collaboration between us, them, an organization called Cruise and Brews, and New Balance. And folks could come and, get a copy of Like the Wind magazine, get a free coffee, browse the other magazines that are on the shelves. So it was really cool. And I said to those guys, like, how is this business model working? And they said, so we still have people that come by and spend 50 euro cents on their daily newspaper. We have people that come specifically to browse the beautiful magazines, and the way that they're merchandised is stunning. So you can actually see them and pick them up and engage with them. And we sell coffee, and the three things together make for a business. They said if we were just selling newspapers, we'd never make it. Yeah. If we were just selling coffee, we'd be up against so much competition, it might not work.
Yeah.
So that it's this sort of and there's so I'm just really racking my brains trying to remember who it was, but it's one of those business books that I absolutely loved. That it'll probably come to me in about 5 minutes, and I'll blurt it out. But they were talking about the fact that in Tokyo there'll be like a vinyl record shop and whiskey store. Yes. And if you're really into vinyl and whiskey in Tokyo, Tokyo is big enough that you've got an addressable market there of people who are obsessed by jazz records and whiskey. To make, it's probably part of the kind of 1,000 true fans concept. So I think that we're a coffee shop / magazine store, or we're a we're a bar with a selection of vinyl or something like that. You're just looking for those crossover points where people are like, oh, I'm into both of those things. It's fascinating.
I had two bars in Salt Lake City. I don't know. This almost came up a minute ago too. I don't know why it did a minute ago, and now, but based on what you said, I have to say it. Our two bars were completely modeled after that Japanese model of vinyl and whiskey. Yeah. So it was called it's called Seabird. I no longer own it, but my friend Asher and I opened it together, and he's a big. I mean, he's kind of a. I don't want to. I'm going to say it so poorly, but anyway, he's an audiophile. He's into the world of vinyl so much, and he's known in that world. And so we, kind of concepted around his personality. And so the bartenders, this is why, because the bartenders, no matter how busy it is, our music is on vinyl in there. So we pay the license to, ASCAP, CSAC, BMI for vinyl, not for just playing, elevator music. So no matter how busy it is, the music stops and it's just awkwardly silent in there until the bartender changes it. Yeah. But it was totally, completely built around, what you just referenced. So that's funny that you went there when my head was already kind of there earlier. That feels like a bit of a tangent. I don't know why I said that.
I mean, keeping going on this front, I've got an idea, and I don't know whether I'm right. I may be proven wrong, but I think people really value effort, even if the effort's not enormous. So I think when you, as a runner, when you meet somebody who's not a runner, but possibly also a runner, but certainly people that are not a runner, and you tell them, most of the time their response is like, wow, that's amazing. Because I think people value effort. They kind of, it's like if you said to somebody, oh, I bought a lottery scratch card and I won $1 million, they probably wouldn't say, wow, that's amazing. They might go, oh, congrats, that's great for you. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
Right.
if you say I built a business and I sold it and I made some money, very often the response is, "Wow, good for you. That's excellent. That's amazing."
Yeah.
It's the same for running. It's the
Yeah.
same for my friend who, sort of momentarily interrupted himself during this dinner party that he was hosting to get up, walk across the room, pick another record. You sort of go, "Oh, I appreciate that little bit of effort he's making."
Yeah.
I was in Boston for the marathon earlier this year, and working, not running. And I ended up taking myself off to watch a baseball match. Don't know anything about baseball. Never been to a baseball match, but I sat there and I had a jolly good time. Even though the Red Sox lost,
Who'd they play?
whatever. I have no idea.
Oh, all
I,
good.
I knew at the time. As I left, I was walking past next to this guy as we were leaving the stadium, and he was literally covered in every Boston Red Sox piece of gear you could imagine. And he kind of caught my eye. When you sort of catch somebody's eye and you feel like you've got to say something. Well, I do feel like I've got to say something. And I, obviously with my English accent, I said, "Oh, that wasn't a great result, was it?" Because the teams had been tied right up until the last innings, and then suddenly the Red Sox lost by like 4 runs or something. I didn't really understand what was going on. And I kind of looked at this guy and I went, "Oh, that wasn't a great result, was it?" And he went, "Be all right, we'll beat him tomorrow." And I didn't realize that they play the same team day after day.
Yeah, they do like these 4-game series with everybody.
Yeah, he didn't give a monkeys. Anyway, as I was walking back into town, there was a bar, and I thought, I'm going to have a beer. So I went in, barman's playing vinyl. And I was like, it just says something about, I bet they look after their beer. I bet they clean the pipes. I bet they just dry the glasses properly.
Yes.
It's just this little bit of like, this is a pain in the butt for this guy who is now trying to serve a bar full of people straight after a Red Sox game. And at the same time, every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, he's got to go, "Oh, sorry, hold on a second," walk to the end of the bar, pick out another record, swap it over, put it on. And you're like, I appreciate that little bit of effort. That's good. That's sort of
the word is, and this was like the word of the year in 2019. So I know it got overplayed, but like curation is the word that comes to mind here. Like with what you do with Like the Wind, you and I heard on that episode with Dylan and Aaron from Second Nature that you're not the editor, but your editor.
Not anymore.
You all are gatekeepers in a good way of the content that makes its way in there, because you're curating something and delivering something. The goal is to deliver something special. And I feel like I agree with that when I think about your articles, and that I can't just go to your website and read them, that I have to order the magazine. It does, to me, make that feel worth the price of admission.
Or not.
Yeah.
And this is the funny thing, I think. Yeah, and I think that we've sort of fallen into, when I say we, I think in business and perhaps societally, we've fallen into this trap of scale is everything. And that's not what I feel anymore. And now I think, wouldn't it be amazing to have a global community of some tens of thousands of people who appreciate good storytelling, design, physical media, running, obviously, who share these values that we have of thinking about how we can make running more inclusive, how we can, address social issues through the lens of running. That doesn't need to be billions of people, or even millions, or even hundreds of thousands. It's actually enough to have, some tens of thousands of people globally who. So scale, this kind of scale thing is again, I think it's another. It's not. I'm not that I'm saying anything. I'm not saying anything's wrong.
Sure,
but it's. I think curation is a really important. And I get the sense that that's Wilder. What you're doing with Wilder is around, curating. It's like people coming together with a shared values and a shared passion or shared geography or whatever it is. But it's about groups, and that to me is another form of curation.
So where Strava really owns what someone does when they're by themselves, no matter how hard they try, they can't do stuff for groups. Like they're trying, but they can't put it front and center. Like from a product standpoint, you can't cannibalize what they have built for the individual runner, and the metrics and all that sort of stuff. That's the money. 100 million users, across varying sports. And so all I wanted to do was build so in all of like this market research, before I knew what I wanted to do, just look like asking a bunch of questions. And essentially, it's not as easy as I would have thought, because I run alone a lot. I love running with people in a race, and I train alone because I do a lot of thinking then. But here, if I'm in Paris and I do want to go on a run with someone, how do I do that? And this was the premise of it of, well, how do you find someone who actually run? So maybe I find a group, but I'm slow. That makes me insecure. So, I mean, can a group just post that they're going to run 5 miles along the Seine at a 10.5-minute pace? And if I want to do that, I can jump in on that. And then if they're a club, I can join their club. And, it's a way to bring people together. So even back when my wife was a cookbook author, and her whole thing was that this was 08, 09. Her whole idea was, let's bring the online community offline. That's all we want to do. So we want to use this great tool of, at the time, the World Wide Web, and we want to use that to get people off of it. Like the goal of using it is to get off of it and build these online in-person communities. And that's kind of been our entire life across everything that we've done. And Wilder is the latest expression of that, where let's use this tech so that we can put it down and be together.
Right. And I mean, it's back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like you could go onto Wilder and say, I'm looking for a group in Paris. And one of the groups that will pop up is the Parisian craft beer run club.
Exactly.
And you'd be like, I love craft beer.
That's club.
Great.
Yeah.
That's my club. I'm going to go to that one. And then there's another club that you'd be like, the I don't know, thrash yourself to pieces on the track club. And you'd be like, maybe that one's not for me. But it's the same idea of it's about
affinity,
curation, isn't
affinity.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Yeah. Thanks for noticing that. So let me ask you this: as again, catching my attention, seeing Leah Yangling, or because of the beautiful nature of the photo, I wouldn't have known it was her unless I was told. It's a really cool, blurry nighttime photo, really, really awesome. And Mike McMonagle, fantastic photographer. I haven't got my hands on that issue. Is there a story about Leah in there? I mean, what are some of the highlights of this issue that, are worth noting?
Well, so this issue is back to, sort of back to normal. So, March this year, we published our 40th edition, which was our 10-year anniversary. It actually came as a double edition, because we missed one year. That was annoying.
Oh, so you had to make it truly the 40th?
Well, we didn't, but I came up with this idea and the team went, if you want. And then it turned into a complete nightmare because we were trying to basically publish 2 issues at the same time. And I became incredibly unpopular, but I just wanted to finish 10 years with a 40th edition.
Very cool.
And then the first issue of our second decade, so issue 41, 39, 40, 41, was our first ever women's edition. And that actually prompted us to think about bringing an editor on board, because whilst I'm the self-appointed editor, it's only because when Julie and I were launching this thing 11 years ago, she was like, well, you're the writer, you do the words and I'll do the design.
Yep.
So I suddenly became the editor. But editing a magazine is a technical enterprise to an extent, I was literally, Googling how do you edit a magazine.
To edit a magazine.
YouTube is your friend.
Yeah.
But the women's edition, we hired a female editor. Okay. So, because I needed I needed to remove myself if it was going to truly be a women's edition. So it's by women, about women, for everyone. And then,
love that. That's a great tagline there.
Yeah. And I mean, actually, our aim worked, which is it's a fabulous edition in and of itself.
Yeah.
But because everyone involved, all the writers, photographers, illustrators, the editor, the sub-editor, the designer, Julie, my wife, everyone was a woman, everyone involved, or identified as a woman. It was almost like a sort of a media version of A Safer Space. So the stories that are in it, I'm not sure we would have got had I been editing it.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair.
But it was brilliant for all the men that read it. Because I had that experience of like reading through the magazine and going, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. And, my wife would be like, cool. Of course you didn't understand that. I was like, okay, sorry. But, so it was genuinely for everyone. And the stories in it are fabulous. It's just that they all happen to be by women and about women. So the current edition 43 is sort of back to normal, which is
got it.
Trying to cover running in all its different aspects. So road, track, and trail in equal measure.
Yeah,
men and women talking about social issues. Interestingly, you asked about the cover photo. So one of the things that we have done in the past is we've often had a photo essay or a visually led story, and then we've said, okay, let's pick something out of that to become the cover. We took a decision with issue 42 and 43 to disconnect the two.
Okay.
And to say, well, actually, we can just publish a beautiful piece of visual stimulation of inspiration that doesn't actually relate to a story in the magazine at all. So Mike's image was just like, yeah, that's beautiful.
I see I like the connection of let's pull something from the photo essay. It also, on some levels, I can imagine from whoever's making that decision, it's like, okay, I don't have to go look through the millions of great photos out there. I know we've already put the work into selecting this photo essay, so I'm going to pick from these 9. Do you feel like the magazine is better for disconnecting itself from the photo essay and looking at the larger, swath of photography out there, or hiring? I don't know if you hired Mike to go take it, or if he submitted it, or how you found it.
We had come across Mike's work and just thought we really want to do something with this. His imagery is beautiful.
Yeah.
When you are creating a cover, and we don't have cover lines, like a typical magazine will just be like a photograph and then just loads of cover lines, loads of like, this is what's in it. Well, we don't do that. We never have any. We never have any cover lines, really, because people are buying the magazine on subscription. So it's not like we're trying to sell it on newsstand. We're not trying to.
It doesn't have to pop off the shelf. Yeah.
No, and you don't have to look at it and think, oh, I'm going to buy that one. That image, I think, is absolutely intriguing and beautiful and evocative of something to do with running. It's got this sense of movement, the color, it's kind of clear what it is, but it's not clear what it is. It's very, and the cover before that was the same. The difference is that often with a photo essay that we would be publishing in a magazine, we'd be publishing 2,000 words with the photos. So then the images can be sort of, they make a bit more sense because there's a story that goes with them. So I think one of the challenges we had sometimes was like an image that looks great with an extended caption or a half page of explanation. When you think about putting it on the cover, you go,
doesn't work.
Out of context, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, I don't get what that is. Yeah. So now I think the idea is that we're picking images because they evoke something about running. Completely on their own. Like, they don't need any explanation. They're just they tell a story in and of themselves. So, which is not to say that we weren't able in 40 issues to find images within those sort of photo essays that we could use.
Sure.
It was just sometimes I think we'd scratch our heads and think one of these must work on the cover, but none of them are absolutely perfect. Whereas Mike's image just. I want to have it printed and blown up and stuck on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, I remember, getting magazines in the old days. I can't remember specific ones, but maybe it's like Sports Illustrated, but you for kids, you could pull out a full poster that would unfold into a poster like that one, that particular image for me with Like the Wind on it. Like, just because, like you say, you don't have to put all of those selling points on the cover. So the image can stand alone. The Like the Wind mark is really beautiful and simple. Like, that's a really great poster.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. We should talk to him about that. Talk to Mike, if you're listening, we need to talk to you about that.
I'll send it to him. What was I going to say? Something about, oh no, I just lost it. I hate when that happens. Previous issues, covers. Nope. Oh, this is it. I don't know. Because I'm really interested in this. So, in the world of trail, we're talking about, running is exploding in popularity. And, while maybe depends on who you talk to, they'll tell you a different compounding annual growth rate. And it's this or it's that. It's this. Well, you cover road, trail, and track. Do you have the data on your subscribers and on your people? Like, are you mostly trail? Are you mostly road? Are you mostly track? Do you have a good smattering of all, or is it all of us, just us trail runners who are also getting to occasionally read about, road and track?
We don't have a lot of data that talks to what kind of running people do. I mean, I have lots and lots of data around demographics like age, location,
Sure.
household income, all that sort of stuff that you'd expect. The funny thing is, we tell these stories in the magazine, and I often wonder whether we could remove the, terrain, the surface.
Oh, interesting.
And because I sort of think, here's an example, right? If somebody's talking to me about a race that they've been doing and they say, so I just came back from the Valencia Marathon. I had a horrible time. Terrible. Like I really, I undertrained. I wasn't trained sufficiently. I didn't.
Oh, you ran it. You weren't just didn't have a booth there. You ran it. Okay.
No. This was me coming back to marathoning after a gap of like 9 years.
Okay.
And I wasn't diligent in my training, missed too many sessions. We've had a crazy busy year work-wise. But anyway, I was undertrained and I went out too fast. And at 20 miles, my face met the wall in a spectacular way. And I desperately wanted to stop. Like I just thought this is, it went super bad. And I just thought, just stop. Now, if someone was telling me that story as the former editor of Like the Wind magazine, I would say to them, well, why didn't you stop?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at. That's the essence of the story.
Yeah.
My pace for the first 20 miles and my pace for the last 6 miles, and whether I was running on road or trail or on the track, or whether it was a marathon or a 100-miler or a 5K, it's not that I don't care, because it adds texture and color and context, but it's not really what I'm trying to get at. So I don't really know whether our readers, often I think our readers are probably the kind of people who have done a bit of everything. Maybe they haven't been track athletes, but they're probably aware of track and field, and they're potentially like fans of the sport.
Yeah.
They may do some of their training on the track. Who knows? Maybe they've done a 5K on the track once just for the experience. They're probably road runners and trail runners, a bit of both. Maybe they've moved from Salt Lake City, where they can get into the mountains really easily, to Paris, where it's a whole load more difficult. Right. And suddenly their running's become, now I'm a road runner. In reality, I think what they are is runners. And they're not particularly one thing or another. And there are some great trail running magazines out there, for people that are just, I would never run on pavement ever. Okay, great. There's great trail. There's trail running magazines out there, but it's more like, the model that we perhaps have looked at in the past. There was a magazine that existed called the Ride Journal. It only lasted for 10 issues. Two brothers who published it. And that's probably the magazine that is the closest that we were basically trying to copy. Okay. And the Ride Journal was anything on two wheels. BMX, mountain biking, road cycling, pedaling to the shops with a bike with a basket on the front. They just told stories about cycling. Whereas there's a magazine called Rouleur, which is about road racing. So it's not even about you and your mates going out on your road bikes for a weekend jaunt. It's literally about the Tour de France teams. Like the Wind is more like the Ride Journal. So we're just about running in all its guises. So we should probably do some more research into our audience, but I don't actually know is the truth.
What you've said is brilliant, though. A great way to summarize what Like the Wind is that you can remove the terrain, and if it still hits on the road, track, and trail runner, what you're doing is you're speaking to the spirit of running. And with Borderlands, the mission of Borderlands is to be the heart of trail running. I want to encapsulate that, and eventually that word trail is going to fall off. I was on a call with someone the other day because I'll occasionally talk about elite things or elite runners and front of the pack people, and they said, "Hey, I thought you were middle and back of the pack." It's like, well, I was, but really, I mean, there's fantastic heart in the champion, in the person who wins. I'm not going to talk about how fast they went or their pace. I want to talk about the heart that got them there and how did
Mm.
they do that. And so it transcends. And so really just saying, I feel like that really helps me understand your magazine better, to say you can remove the terrain and it still hits. This is the spirit of a runner of any distance who's trying to do
Yeah.
something maybe that's harder or, unique for them.
Yeah, exactly. And the where and the what is then adding context. So if you're talking to somebody about an experience that they've had, and then they start to tell you, and by the way, it was 100 miles in the mountains, you're like,
Yeah.
it sort of adds,
Yeah.
which would be different if they said, and all of that happened in my head and it was on a road 5K. You'd be like, oh, okay. The context adds something, but I don't think it's the sort of the it's not the story.
It's not the
story
linchpin. It's not the thing that pulls it all together. It's yeah. And man,
I mean, a good example of that is very, very early in the magazine, like issue 2. We got an email from a chap called Dean Karnazes. Can you imagine? and I was like, first of all, I thought, it can't be real. But
Yeah.
it was him. And he said, I'd love to submit a story. And of course, I was like, yeah, amazing, please. And I was expecting this sort of, epic thing about, running across America or something like that. He wrote a story about accompanying his daughter on a 10K. And it's still one of my favorite bits of writing in the magazine. It's absolutely brilliant. Like the emotion that he felt as a father watching his daughter really, really struggle running a 10K, and how proud he felt of the fact that she didn't stop and she kept going. And you're talking about Dean Karnazes.
Yeah. That's great.
But it's more. So suddenly you could remove all of the other stuff and the story would be absolutely fantastic standalone. Then you add in the context of, it's Dean Karnazes. And you're like, it's even cooler. Like it just adds another level because of what that guy is and who he, what he does.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I knew that we'd get in the weeds on the business side of it, but I think it's super interesting for my audience, for me. I wish you nothing but the best. And as you are a part of this renaissance, this revival, this, who cares what it is, I just wish you this success with Like the Wind. I think Like the Wind is at the point where it's critical to the community. Like when a new issue comes out, I see it pop up all over on social media, ironically, in digital spaces. But yeah, I wish you nothing but success, and I hope to have you back on here at some point and hope to meet you in person, whether it be at Western States next year or UTMB or something like that. But let's do this again.
Well, and similarly, I think what you're doing around community and storytelling is fantastic. I am genuinely platform agnostic. I don't really care. If people are coming together to share stories about running, I'm all for it. Whether that's in audio form, whether that's in person through Wilder, the post-run beer or coffee or whatever it happens to be, for me, it's just heaven.
I'll pray run.
At Pray Run. I mean, this is just it's fantastic. So community and storytelling, I think what you're doing in those two sides is, I wish you all the best of luck as well, because the running world, I think the more we can lean into storytelling and community, the better, and the more that running as a space, as a sector, as a force for good will continue to exist. So
force for good. That's awesome. Love it. All right, man. Well, let's do this again sometime.
Thank you.
All right.